Hey, how going? Welcome to our tutorial on crow and crane. So crow and crane, the only real difference is that crow pose balances on bent arms and crane pose balances on straight arms. So if you were wondering what the difference was there, bent versus straight. So in our crow pose, really because we're working in the Untitled Chapter, so that place of overcoming fear and finding the courage to, I guess, expose our vulnerability in that space. That's where some of the challenges lie. But it is actually a pose that anyone can play, and I really enjoy doing it. It's about a little bit about counterbalance, a little bit about strength, and of course finding balance. So perfect, really. When I'm warming up for these two postures, I like to look, sun salutation's always going to be a great way to warm up. A little bit of wrist exercises, so some pressure into the wrist here, reversing the hands, the tops of the hands together here, and feeling that stretch into the wrist. Warming up the wrists with a couple of rounding exercises going in both directions, maybe a little bit of wrap dancing here, finding a little bit of movement and flexibility in the wrists. So we can also do some of these postures with them hitting the floor. So hands coming into tabletop, hands palms into the earth. You can turn the hands palms, fingertips facing towards each other, some gentle rocking here so that you're stretching and working into the hands. Also turning the fingertips towards the toes, and I can feel that stretch right up my forearm. It's beautiful. And giving a little stretch there. So also coming down, as I demonstrated before, but with the tops of the hands flat to the floor and pulling back there. So there's all sorts of stretches that you can do there. So even if you're just using hand and fingertip stretches here, some of these little traffic lights, just warming up through the hands. Because ultimately, one of the reasons that we practice our downward dog, and I tell you to take starfish hands, is so that you're actually sending the weight right through the whole hand and not just taking the weight into the back of the wrist here. So eventually, as you come into these postures, your fingertips act like little brake pads, so creating that little catch for you. So really super important that you do distribute the weight evenly through the hands, and that you have the hands like starfish, so the fingers spread nice and wide apart. This middle guy here pointing forward, and that's a way that we get that correct placement and alignment in our crow pose. So the other thing I like to do as I'm warming up is definitely a little bit of core work. So in our other video you would have seen some of the core exercises that I recommend. So Navasana, and then canoe, which is like that lower version of Navasana, and you can do that with hands over the head or hands behind here. And then some other exercises with our cork yoga blocks, so that we are actually working into the core, and particularly the exercise where you're toe tapping and you've got the block squeezed under the knee. That really, it mimics the action of crow when you're in your arm balance. So let's get into the posture and see where we go from here. So with our crow pose, it's the easiest place to start if you're not coming through a flow is from your hero's pose. So then tucking the toes underneath at the back, and then coming into this frog-like posture. So I've got my feet touching. It's almost like a variation of Malasana. But here, you know, I can see my hands, I'm well placed. I can then lift my hips, bend into the elbows, so you're creating a little platform there. And then as I place my knees on the outside of my elbows onto my biceps, I can then lift my toes from the earth. Coming down and taking a little bit of a reprieve from that. And we'll go through that posture again. So there's quite a bit of core strength involved in that. And you've got to look at the counterbalance. If I turn side on, the counterbalance between where the head is versus where the toes or the heels are. So part of the fear factor around our crow pose is that we fear falling over because in this inversion, our head is below our heart, is below our hips. So the very dictionary definition of an inversion. But you've got to think, I'm only 30 centimeters off the floor, if that. So if you fall over, there's really not that far to go. So what is it that you're actually fearing? And that's a question that we've got to ask ourselves as we go into this. Is it fear of not being good enough? Is it fear of failure? Is it bringing up other things that that we have perceived as being challenges in our life that perhaps we haven't overcome? So this can be a really beautiful breakthrough posture if you are struggling with some of those things. Set yourself the challenge of coming into crow. So again, placing the hands, palms flat to the earth, that middle finger facing forward, and I do like a little bit of joint stacking here, so wrists, elbows, shoulders. The body loves alignment, so wrist stacking or arm stacking here. I've tucked the toes at the back. I'm coming up into my little malasana, like a variation of malasana. I'm not actually heels, arm on the floor. So pressing into the hands, lifting the hips, tucking the knees. So see how my elbows are bent here, tucking the knees and allowing the knees to rest on the back of the bicep, and then lifting the toes and creating that little balance here. So you can stay here for as long as you like and then come down. So one of the ways that if you are struggling in this posture, I suggest using a little bit of a block at the back here. So I'm quite comfortably sitting on this block here. I'm going to set myself up for crow again. So with that wrist, elbows, shoulders, arms stacking or joint stacking, I'm up on top of my toes. I'm going to bend into the elbows and lift the hips high. I'm going to engage my core and see how I shift the body weight forward. From here, I'm just going to, all my weight is in my left leg here and on my right elbow, and I'm just going to toe tap into that block, because what that does is it tells me where I am, and then you can just lift the toes and eventually you'll come all the way up to your crow. So using the block can be a really nice way to work your way into your crow pose if you have that level of uncertainty. And you can even double stack the blocks if you want to train yourself to lift a little bit higher so that you are actually getting the hips well above the head. And that takes a little bit of core strength, takes a little bit of arm strength, and you're also testing your counterbalance. So figuring out where you are in the world. So that is your crow pose. So the next cab off the rank is crane. So a little bit more of a challenge in your crane pose because we are operating from straight arms. So there's no reason you can't give this a go. It just will require a little bit more strength work. So again, working through all the warm-ups that we talked about, the core work, working into downward dog and also into dolphin pose can build strength through the upper body. Plank pose, like a beautiful one. Your Chaturanga Dandasana is just, as you move through your sun salutations, just the perfect way to continue to build strength in the upper body so that you can execute some of these arm balances. So as I come into my crane pose, hands, palms pressed into the earth, just as we do in crow. I'm going to come up onto the whole foot this time because what I want to do is walk forward, and I want my knees to be up in my armpit, almost in my armpits. So I'm actually feeling that balance of my knees into my armpits, and then I can lift the toes from here. So the reason that I talk about bringing the knees a little higher towards the armpits here, because unlike crow pose, where you've actually got the bent elbows, so you've got this platform here in which you can rest the knee on either elbow or either bicep rather, you don't have that in crane pose, and so there lies the challenge. You've got to really engage the core so that you can draw the knees up the straight arms. So drawing the knees up into the armpits actually does give you a little bit of direction there, and it tells you you've really got to engage the core to draw the hips up and feel that strength. So it does require a little bit more core work, so to create that strength and a little bit of tenacity and application to actually get up there. So don't feel discouraged if crane pose is not yours straight off the bat. I can't tell you how many times I fell over. There's actually a picture of me somewhere, and I will post it in the training, of me going into crow pose or crane pose, and I had the timer cam on, and I literally fell out, and it's a photo of my butt and one of my legs in the air. I don't even know how I got there, but look, thankfully I was practicing on grass, so it was all good. But you know, if we fall over, what's the worst thing that can happen? We fall over and we meet Mother Earth. She's not such a bad egg, old Mother Earth. So, you know, no biggie. We're only like a couple of centimeters off the ground, a ruler's height, if that. So what have we got to fear? Maybe it's our ego coming into play a little bit. Oh my Lord, someone's going to see me fall over. BFD. Big fucking deal. It's no biggie, because everyone's fallen over at some point in time in their lives, and our yoga space or our yoga mats is a safe space for us to explore things and learn new things in our lives. So I think coming to terms with what's the worst thing that's going to happen, I'm going to fall over and meet Mother Earth, big deal. Or someone might see me, but then they might see you get up and try again, and maybe you getting up to try again is going to encourage them to get up and try again. So this is where collective consciousness, and 2 is greater than 1 and 10 is greater than 2, can be really a very beautiful thing. So never underestimate the power of trying. So coming into crane pose, I'll give you the side view here. So hands, palms down to the earth. So I am looking at my joint stacking here, fingertip facing forward, wrists, elbows, shoulders, hands pressed into the floor so that my fingertips are working here. I'm lifting up, I'm bringing my elbow or my knees as high as I can, and then pressing up into my crane pose. Exhale and release. So you can stay in those postures for as long as you like or as little as you like, and you can try as many times as you like. As you come out and you want to take a little bit of a cool down, repeating some of those stretches that we had before. You'll notice too that you might feel a little bit into the bicep here, so, and the tricep. So taking some of these overhead stretches. So here, this one's for the tricep. I've got my right arm down my back, and I'm giving a little bit of a pull here with my left hand, and you can swap over. So grabbing hold of the left elbow here, and my left hand is tracking down between my shoulder blades. So that's a really lovely tricep stretch. Giving yourself a really big hug here too, and taking the arms around the back and opening up through the chest. So my hands, palms are squeezing together as I open the chest, and I open the heart space to the sky. I'm drawing my hands, and I'll give you a little bit of a side view on that one. So my hands, palms are squeezed together, and I'm drawing my hands back down towards the earth, opening the heart space and dropping the head back. So this is directly, it's a counter pose for our crane, where we've been very forward and rounded through the body, opening the chest here, squeezing the hands, palms together. You're getting a lovely stretch right through the arms and through the chest, opening the chest and the heart space, looking up towards the sky. So if you feel dizzy or short of breath in these postures, of course, hop out, take 5, take a break. Take a break in hero's pose, take a break in balasana, child's pose. I like to set a little bit of a guideline for myself, is that like I try 3 times, and if the posture's not working for me on the 3rd time, I actually take a break. So I walk away, I do something else, and I come back. So one of the really beautiful lesson that you can learn after being in your practice and being on your mat, it's not about, we don't just turn up and expect these things to happen magically. We need to go through the process. And by going through the process, I mean going through your yoga flow. So when you come to the mat, spending that time warming up the body, maybe you do a little bit of abdominal work, maybe you do your sun salutations, you work through your warriors, 1, 2, 3. You work through side angle pose, and maybe your wide leg forward folds and some stretching so that you're opening up into the hip. And all of those exercises are engaging all of the different muscles within the body and opening up into the hips, creating strength as you press through your sun sals. And then as you move into your crow and crane pose, you've actually prepared the body for some of these more challenging, if you like, postures. So there you have it, crow and crane. I would love to see your photos, whether they be you falling over or actually making a date with crow and crane. I'd love to see those photos, so feel free to post them on the group page, and I encourage you to bring these beautiful asana into your practice. And I will actually integrate them into our yoga flow for this week, and so you'll see camel and rabbit pose, so Ustrasana and Sasangasana, and then your crow and crane. So taking those challenges. Of course, there's variations there, side crow, and we'll explore some of those a little further down the track. Anyway, have a fabulous time on your mat with crow and crane.